Hello and welcome to another episode on Maritime Radar. Nigerian ports before now have been described as the most expensive and inefficient in the West and Central Africa sub-region. This made the nation's seaports unattractive to importers who preferred diverting cargoes meant for Nigerian ports to neighboring countries that have efficient port systems. Stakeholders say this has seen some level of improvement with the painstaking work to enforce reforms by Mohammed Bello Koko, the managing director of the Nigerian Ports Authority. Nevertheless, fixing key maritime infrastructure must be given priority if Nigeria must achieve its dream of becoming a maritime hub in the West African region. Assessing the economic potential of Nigeria's port are some of the issues that will be on the front burner on today's show. I'm Nneoma Obi-Asualo. Dilapidated port infrastructure, long cargo dwell time, vessels turnaround time, long clearing process, and port congestion occasioned by traffic gridlock on the port access road are some of the basic challenges that have retarded the viability of Nigeria's seaport. Nigeria needs to pay more attention to developing her local shipping capacity and seafaring profession as the continued underdevelopment of Nigeria's shipping industry, poor infrastructure at the port, pollution, unease of doing business, absence of synergy among government and foreign trade partners are factors undermining the country's chances of tangible maritime development. Before we get further into today's lineup on the program, let's find out the latest in maritime news.
After being moribund for 75 years, Motor Angel Africa has emerged as a preferred bidder for the Benin Port project in Edo State, South Nigeria. The 300,000 TEU Benin Port is meant to reactivate the pre-colonial trade route through the Benin and Ose rivers, which was where the Portuguese first had contact with the Benin Kingdom in 1472 AD. Edo State Governor Godwin Obaseki, in his remarks, pointed out that the port would help boost the local economy, provide job opportunities for people, help address some of the country's unemployment issues, and suppress part of unemployment challenges experienced in the country. Preliminary findings showed that the Edo Port project will create over 200,000 direct and indirect jobs for skilled and unskilled workers. Nigeria's foreign trade data shows that the ports in Lagos State, Nigeria's commercial capital, have continued to dominate Nigeria's foreign trade transactions. The National Bureau of Statistics says the Lagos ports responsible for 97% of Nigeria's export trade in the first 3 months of 2023, just as the same ports accounted for 80% of import trade during the same period. The Senegalese Navy has intercepted a boat with around 70 migrants risking the perilous Atlantic route to Spain. This is the third reported crossing this week as attempts from West Africa pick up in the warmer summer months. In a Twitter post, the army said that the vessel was caught late on Wednesday night at the mouth of the Senegal River, which flows into the Atlantic Ocean from northern Senegal. All 71 passengers, including 2 women, were handed to the police. The Atlantic migration route to the Canary Islands, typically used by sub-Saharan African migrants trying to reach Spain, is one of the world's deadliest, and summer is its busiest period. The state news agency reported 6 deaths after a vessel with around 60 people on board capsized at the Senegal River's mouth near the northern city of St. Louis. Despite the recent rise in incidents, the total number of irregular migrants reaching the Canary Islands has so far been lower this year than in 2022. Green transition remains a central underlying driver for shipping markets. This is according to the latest review from Clarkson's research, which estimates that 44% of new BU tonnage ordered in the first half of 2023 will be powered with alternative fuel. With 62 orders secured in the first 6 months of 2023, methanol continues to close in on LNG as a mainstream fuel, with LNG locking in the fuel choice in 86 orders. The container ship sector continues to lead the way with over 100 vessels on order. This compares to 251 LNG-fueled container ships in operation and on order. Pacific Island countries have shared their readiness regarding the mandatory operation of the Maritime Single Window from January 2024. The Maritime Single Window enables the digitalized exchange of information which is required for ships that arrive at a port. The information includes how long they stay and when they depart. Following the amendment to the FAL Convention, which is to be enforced from the 1st of January 2024, implementation of MSWs by ports has become mandatory. At the 45th Annual General Meeting of the Pacific Maritime Transport Alliance Conference held on Niara, Solomon Islands, representatives of Fiji, the Solomon Islands and Tonga used the opportunity to share updates on the preparations to implement the MSWs. For implementation of the window, it is recommended that countries establish a proper legal framework as the first phase. Second phase involves making a proper analysis of business processes, and for the third phase, there will be implementation of technical solutions.
Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just a conversation starter, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting, and this is where it begins, right here at News Central TV, with stories that put Africa first.
If you are just joining us, this is Maritime Radar. Our focus on the show today will be on the economic viability of Nigeria's ports, the need to address the overdependence on Lagos ports, the challenge of shipping development, which is the core mandate of Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency. I spoke with the former Nneoma boss, Temisan Omatseye, on the call for a state of emergency on Nigeria's decaying port infrastructure. This and many more on the show. Stay with us. It's good to have you on the show, sir.
Thank you very much.
Let's start this conversation looking at our ports. What, in your view, is the economic potential of our ports?
Well, we must first of all understand the initial concepts of the Nigerian ports. Nigerian ports basically are inland ports, and the main concept for the construction of the ports during the colonial days was basically to exports. The British colonialists, basically, their whole focus was basically taking mineral resources and moving it down to the ports and then shipping it out. And also in those times, the vessels which we're using at that time were not very, very big vessels. So it was reasonably okay to have inland ports. So right now, as the economy has grown and people are looking for economies of scales and how things are going to be working, where we're getting bigger vessels so as to reduce the cost of transportation. The ports, in as much as they are what they are, they have become quite uneconomical in the sense that larger vessels that can carry 15 to 20,000 TEUs, although they are squeezing them into tin can and the rest, but really and naturally they've become quite uneconomical. So really what we need to do is, Lord, even though our ports are very much available, but we need to begin to focus a lot more on deep sea ports, which is actually than the way Nigeria is going right now. But the inland ports, yes, it can still work for a reasonable amount of cargo based on the draft restriction we have, but we still have to look at how we can either dredge them to deeper channels so that they can come in, bigger vessels can come in, or find other ways to develop deep sea ports.
Okay, you said initially the concept was for export, but that we have moved away from that export. We can really not have that export right now. Yeah. It's more of imports, so that has changed. So how did it affect the economic? Because when it was export, it was bringing in huge resources to Nigeria. Yeah. So now that it has moved from export to more of import, okay, because we can barely see export going out. So what it then has is the economic viability of the port, and what importance is it to us?
Okay, well, first of all, if you look at the way it works right now, in the good old days, there used to be a lot of exports when it related to either cocoa, groundnuts, or rubber, or whatever the case may be. So you used to have the bulk vessels coming in to carry these things out, and then those vessels could come in at drafts of maybe 6 meters, 6.4 meters, or whatever the case may be. So that was reasonably okay. Now, if you look at the way things are operating right now, a lot of exports are going out there right now. So, well, reasonably export, but we are doing more of importation. And if you look at them, the importation right now, most of the vessels right now that are coming in to do imports are carrying about 15,000 containers on board, which is quite substantial. What is now happening is that the more containers a vessel carries, naturally the reduction in the freight rates.
But what we see today is everyone is coming to Lagos.
Yep.
Why do we have the overdependence on Lagos ports, which is also right now affecting infrastructure of Lagos port, that stakeholders seem to be advising a state of emergency on the infrastructure of our Lagos ports? So what do you think, comparing to these two questions, the overdependence and the call for emergency, state of emergency?
Well, there are several reasons that could cause the problem in Lagos. First of all, you must realize also, we as Nigerians are not in control of the shipping. Okay. The international ship owners are definitely in control of the vessels they bring into Nigeria. In so doing, what they basically do is that they're able to come to a port which is much convenient for them. Okay. And right now, Lagos is most convenient for them. Also, you must also realize we had a lot of insecurity issues that related to the areas of the Niger Delta all the way down to the Bakassi area or in the Gulf of Guinea. So many of the ship owners would prefer a situation whereby they would rather not go in that area, because you now face the issue of war risk premium and the exposure of their crew to being attacked. In my opinion, I personally feel that, the fact that they fail to go to other ports is an opportunity for Nigerians. Because I believe that strongly that, we necessarily do not need to have a situation where foreign ship owners are going into every single port in Africa. What we need to develop is to take it to the next level by developing our cabotage, where we begin to create a feeder vessel system. So when the cargo is discharged at the ports of, let's say, Lagos or Tinkan or Apapa, then we as Nigerians should begin to develop a local feeder system so that where now containers which are cleared can now be carried by smaller container vessels and be fed to the eastern ports. So you can now begin to take cargoes to likes of Cocoa, to Warri, to Port Harcourt and Calabar, and then bringing back the empties and the exports through that same channel, so that what then happens is that the bigger vessels only focus on going to those ports. Also, I believe strongly that we should begin to strengthen the barge operation, in the sense that rather than having all these terminals in places like Orile and everywhere else, which is also creating a problem, rather I think we should move them more to areas like using Ikorodu ports, where we can barge to Ikorodu ports, or basically creating terminals in places like Ekpe, where the road network is become quite strong, and also go to places like Ijebu Waterside at Ogun State or Ondo State, where cargoes can now be taken to terminals in those areas, and then they can be moved to Ore. So what you're doing now, you're basically freeing up the congestion in central Lagos and taking it more to the rural areas, so that people who are bringing back their empties, they don't necessarily have to come to Lagos. They can just stop in those areas and they are barged. And all this can be covered in the singular freight rates which the international ship owner is charging.
Okay, you see that it's obvious that they are not moving to these rural areas you mentioned. It's like what is happening now is they are looking towards Lekki Port. Do you fear the challenges of Apapa and Tinkan being replicated at the Lekki?
Oh, definitely, it's going to be the case, because it's unfortunately for Nigeria, what we did, we put the cart before the horse. The Lekki Deep Sea Port was done without taking into consideration the environmental impact of the Lekki Deep Sea Port. Now,
and they still lack this basic infrastructure.
They do lack. There's no infrastructure in Lekki Deep Sea Port. I'll give you an example. You have in Lekki right now, Lekki Free Trade Zone, you have the Dangote refinery, you have the Dangote fertilizer, you have the Pinnacle, and then you have the Lekki Deep Sea Port. Now, in all of this, you're still relying on the same road infrastructure that was built for normal road transportation. So, if you're building that kind of those kind of ports like they have right now, the minimum you should have is a 10-lane expressway, basically coming in and going out. So right now, if you go to the likes of Pinnacle, which has its tank farm there, when the vessel comes into discharge, the stretch of trailers waiting to load is sometimes between 3 to 5 kilometers long. Okay, that is just there. Dangote has not come on stream yet. Wow. So you can imagine what will happen. And then Lekki Deep Sea Port is not beginning to push out. So Lekki Deep Sea Port should just purely, in my own opinion, do exactly what we think, basically close off the gate and just make it as a feeder port. What that does for Nigeria, basically, it assists us in our cabotage regime. So it allows us to begin to build our vessel fleets. It allows us to train our manpower in vessel management. It's focused purely on the internal resources of the Nigerian market and make life more livable for people in Lagos.
Yes, we'll take your concluding thoughts on the challenges we have on the ports. Then we'll move on to shipping development. But that will be after this short break. Please stay with us.
News Central TV, Africa's #1 storyteller, has come with the best of both worlds. With a combination of news app and live TV, we ensure that you keep track of the latest headlines, breaking news, and in-depth analysis from professional journalists from around the continent. Download the News Central TV app on Android and iOS and get started today. Don't forget to follow us on News Central's social media platforms. News Central, Africa First.
If you're just joining us, this is Maritime Radio, and I still have with me Temisan Omatseye. He is the former Director General of NIMASA. Before we went on that break, you were providing solutions to the challenges we have in our ports. So there's this call for concessionaires to be part of the infrastructural repairs in our ports. What's your take?
Well, my take basically is that, first of all, we need to look at what the agreement says. And my understanding, and I must confess, I'm not...
Maybe towards renewal, if it's not part of it.
Well, my own take on this is that basically it was supposed to be a landlord-tenant agreement. Now, my fear with having to get the concessionaires to have the right to fix the port is basically we're going to be holding ourselves in bondage. My feeling is that they would come with conditions that may hold us down for several years and come at rates which may not be viable for Nigeria. So I believe strongly that, whatever it takes, I think it is in the interest of Nigerian Ports Authority or the federal government of Nigeria to source the funds from anybody else. They need to sit down and say, but there are people out there who are very, very interested in coming to do this. But I just believe NPA just needs to get up themselves and think like business people. You don't think like a public servant, you need to think like a businessman.
If this must be done.
If this must be done. And it's very important that it must be done, because I hear the state. But how did we get to where we are? Lack of maintenance. That
brings me to the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency. Do you think, in your view, it has fared well in its core mandate of shipping development?
Well, I will tell you something, and as much as trying to avoid trying to in any way criticize a place that I love so much, that I worked so much in, but this challenge the NIMASA faces is that basically it has not even started to do its core mandate. I'll give you a reason why, and I've always been saying this. Quite simply, NIMASA was an offshoot of what we call the Nigerian Maritime Authority, and Nigerian Maritime Authority focused purely on the UNCTAD code, which is the 4040 cargo sharing scheme. Now, the NIMASA now became a maritime regulatory agency, Okay. Now, for maritime regulatory agency, there are set professionalism that is supposed to be there and set skill sets that are supposed to be there. And unfortunately, since Nneoma was created, Nneoma still carries the organogram of NMA. It has not actually changed its organogram to fit.
Is it a failure of leadership?
No, it's not a failure of leadership. It's a failure of, I don't know how to put it. It's very difficult because when I was going to become DJ Nneoma, I was schooled by the people who were in PCOMs.
Okay.
And they told me what the vision of Nneoma was.
Should be.
And the report which was created, the Nzewe report, which was created, which was made to actually form the agency called Nneoma, and I was able to lay my hand on. So we're trying to structure it and take it back to its original concept, where we're going to have a proper organogram and a job description. I tell you why I have a challenge with that. Because what is happening in Nneoma is quite unfair to the Nneoma staff. The reason quite simply is that a Nneoma staff needs to come into an organization, know his career path, so that when he follows that career path, his training is based on that career path. And so that when and not when a DG comes, a DG just, because doesn't like your face, throws you all over the place. Why I'm telling you that, because we are not following a career path, a clear-cut job description, we are losing opportunities in the international space. So there are opportunities coming up in IMO and in places like United Nations and whatever, in boundaries, because you don't have the career which requires you to grow in that area. When you now put in your application, you do not have the required requisite training
and experience to take
so we are not, because of what is happening, because an engineer can be moved from one area to admin to this to that, and he's not following a clear-cut training path, which
and it has just to be there because maybe there are no jobs outside.
Exactly. So the issue quite simply is that is what needs to happen, so that we can take opportunity of what happens in international space when it comes to maritime administration.
Okay, let us analyze the Seafarers Development Program being championed for Nneoma. Do you think what they are doing is right, or compared to other maritime nations?
Well, you are really putting the stick to it, because you know how I sent the first set of seafarers out. The Seafarer Development Program was a concept I met, which was being developed administratively, and I must commend it was being done by my predecessor, Dr. Dosumu, and then I was the one that sent the first set of seafarers to Egypt and to Philippines and the rest of the place. And the concept was quite right, because what happened was that the master mariners came to us that by virtue of our national shipping line days, we were losing our officers were getting old and out of the system. So we needed to develop a new crop of officers and whatever else. So that was what the Seafarers Development Program was. And the aim was to basically to send our young ones to universities to train them for 4 years for nautical engineering so they can become officers. Now, it doesn't stop there. It's supposed to move on to a situation whereby you're supposed to get them their certificate of competency, and not only get the certificate of competency, so they can actually get their sea time. Now, the whole aim of that...
But there are no ships for sea time.
That is what I'm saying. NSDP was only a first phase. The second phase was to develop a system whereby we acquire assets and vessels.
But should there be a first phase when there will be opportunity for the follow-up phase?
No, let me tell you why. Because remember also, we were also trying to follow on the Philippines example, whereby in Philippines they are earning almost 25 to about 20 to 35 billions of revenue coming in from exporting of seafarers. So that was also, it was not only for the development of our own local seafarers, but also it was also an aim to send our own seafarers abroad so they can send in revenue back in the diaspora. So that was actually the strategy. The strategy was to fill up a gap of almost 250,000 shortage of seafarers worldwide. What I believe would have helped more was basically for us if we had set up a national carrier on the likes of, or a national fleet. I believe more of the national fleet. So let's say, for instance, we did NUL, bring it back to life, something like that, and then basically begin to have national carriers. What I mean by national carriers is basically vessel flagged Nigerian flag. With that, once you become a national carrier, automatically the law provides under Section 36 of the Nneoma Act that you have a right of 50% of all government, federal government, states and local government cargoes by virtue of that law. So with that, you can begin to start the business and begin to put seafarers on board the vessel. Because the problem you have on your COC, if you do cabotage, you're going to get a coastal license only. But for you to be able to get a proper license, you need to get an international license. So this will give the opportunities for us. But also, NNPC could have used it as part of a bargaining tool for all the imports. So we're importing 1.5 million tons of petroleum products. And you can also make it as part of a condition that if you are going to be bringing our products in, you must take in at least 2 or 3 of Nigerian seafarers on board your vessel. But you see, the problem is that there's no connect between the Maritime Administration and other agencies of whatever. So everybody works at parallel, so it doesn't allow them to
And we are not achieving results. Unfortunately, this discourse has been very, very enlightening, and time is not always our friend, so we have to end here. But I must thank you most kindly for your time and thoughts on the program. I really learned a lot. It's been Temisan Omatseye. He is the former Director General of the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency. Thank you most kindly for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
And that's our show this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I did. Every week, join us on Maritime Radar as we explore factors that will ensure the development of the maritime sector in Africa. You can also expect the latest in global maritime news and industry insights right here. I'm Nneoma Obi-Asualo. Man, thanks for watching. See you again next time.